Good evening. You are listening to Raven Radio, KCAW Sitka. It's 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, September 17th. I'm reporter Catherine Rose. I'm broadcasting live tonight from the Cable House, and you're listening to Raven Radio's Live Assembly Candidate Forum. Tonight, we'll hear from candidates running for 2 open seats on the Sitka Assembly. Those seats are being vacated by members Stephen Eisenbeis, who's running for mayor, and Richard Wien, who is not seeking re-election this year. 8 candidates are running for 2 seats tonight. Joining me virtually this evening are all 8 of those candidates, and they are Crystal Duncan, Rebecca Himshoot, Leo Jimmy, Steve Lee, Diana Dapsevich, Amy Bethune, Marshall Albertson, and Frederick Olson. And they're all here this evening to answer the questions that listeners have submitted. But I have some housekeeping before we begin. Just a reminder to both the candidates and the listeners, this isn't a debate tonight. This is an opportunity to share your views and opinions on the city and a chance for voters to learn where you stand on key issues. Now, that said, you have your time and you can use it how you choose. So if you want to address another candidate's stance on an issue, you're welcome to do so, but there won't be a formal rebuttal section. It's not a formal debate. This is a forum. There is going to be, for the first hour and 10 minutes or so, a 2-minute time limit on each question. So for the first hour, we're going to have longer answers to questions. And then because there are so many of you, in the second hour, we're going to switch to 1 minute per question so that we can get to as many questions as possible. So I respectfully ask that you stick to the time limit so each candidate has the opportunity to answer and we're able to get as many questions answered as possible. Rob Woolsey, our news director, will be holding a timer up to his computer screen so that you'll know how much time you have left. And again, I respectfully ask that you stick to that time limit. And since this year we aren't hosting our forum with an audience, we encouraged listeners to ask questions in advance, and we received so many questions, but you can still call 747-5877 right now if you didn't get the chance to submit one, but you have a pressing question that you'd like to ask the candidates. So let's go ahead and get started. My first question for you is, if you will please introduce yourself and briefly explain why you're running for a seat on the Sitka Assembly, and we'll go with Amy Bethune first.
All right, good evening. I'm Amy Bethune, and I am running for a seat on the Sitka Assembly. I want life for Sitka. I've watched what's happened this past year and the job loss and the economic loss, and just so saddened by it. And I want Sitka to be a place families can grow and do really well. Kids can stay, can afford to stay. I would like to see sound management of the city budget. I'm a fiscal conservative, and I think that smaller government is generally better than bigger government. And I would like to I'm a numbers person, and so I would like to offer some fresh eyes on the budget. I would like to see Sitka have a strong recovery from this past year. And I think that Sitka's people are her greatest asset. I think there are solutions in our community, creative solutions that we may not have considered yet. And I look forward to the possibility of representing Sitka on the Assembly. Thank you.
All right, next up, Diana Dapsevich.
Hello. First, thank you, Catherine, and thanks KCAW for hosting this forum. My name is Diana Dapsevich. I was born and raised here in Sitka. I just returned 4 years ago to make this my permanent home. And I work at Dapsevich Accounting right now. So, I mean, you can imagine just this year alone, I've had to have some really tough conversations with a lot of my clients, individuals, businesses, families, about what they're going through, trying to generate support for them this year and help them plan for the future. And it's been really, really hard. So that's definitely part of the reason that I have felt compelled to really get involved, where I think that I can help with my skills and just with the amount of the compassion and care that I really have for these people. I also feel that, you know, in order for Sitka to really come back from this, we have a lot of potential with the resources that we have. So I really want to focus also on like protecting and promoting our historical, cultural, and natural resources, and really using those to be able to come back from this. I am 30 years old. I'm the youngest candidate here. And I also just really want to help usher in the next generation of leaders in this community, because the decisions that are being made now are going to affect me for the rest of my life potentially, and I really want to be a part of that.
Thank you, Diana. Crystal Duncan.
Thanks so much. I want to start off by properly introducing myself. So, take wedi ayachat, shanach hitawe hanaka hidi, sheet kachye chat nawat, kiksadi yadi city. What I introduced is my first name is Crystal. My Tlingit name is Kayetli. I am Eagle Brown Bear from the Valley House in Angoon, and that's basically, I inherit that from my mother's line. And then to show respect for my father, he is Kiksadi with roots from here in Sitka. And I want to start off by thanking you for hosting this forum. It's COVID times, which means it's really difficult for us to get out and campaign as we typically would. I'm here to earn votes, and I know I need to do that by basically responding to people's requests for information. So why do I think I would serve as a good assembly member this time around? I think I'm the right choice in the right time. COVID, we're surrounded by it. I happen to be housed on the healthcare organization here in Sitka, Search Campus. I'm employed by another Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium up in Anchorage, and I have a lot of concerns just based off of what I've seen in that job. I think Sitkans are hurting as a result of it, whether you look at the economic impacts or you look at the health of our community. These are areas that I'm passionate about, and so that's why I find myself submitting my name. Another point that I just wanted to point out, and I think I'll be able to go into it a little bit further, is representation. We have a current assembly, and I respect the fact that they're willing to serve. This is a hard job, but I don't see myself reflected in the current membership. And so I want to offer a diversity of perspective, and I want to be a voice of a large community that I think feel underrepresented at this time. So I appreciate the opportunity tonight, and thank you to my fellow candidates. And there you go. There's my 2 minutes.
All right. Thank you, Crystal. Leo Jimmy.
Hi, I'm Leo Jimmy. Second name is Dacho Dane, Chilkat out of Haines, Alaska, and 54, and moved up here in Sitka in 2012. Got 3 boys, and my main reason for running is a number of different things, but the top one is treatment. Coming from my own background and what I know and would like to have done for the town, and the effects of drug and alcohol, and what we need to bring back to this town, that level of care, along with a number of other issues. But with that top platform there, though, is the drugs and alcohols, the opioids, meth and heroin, and a treatment needed for that to bring back what we lost in 2013. And down from that would be communications, government to government, and that would be between Sitka, the Sitka Tribe of Alaska, and all the other entities of Search, Sitka Counseling, Fire Department, Police Department, to create also a town hall meeting of all of them to look toward this next year of 2021 of how we're going to recover from this COVID-19, as we're not even out of the first wave, and we've just got a lot of work to do, and then there's a lot of information and communication to get out there to the public respectfully, and getting back communications from them of how the city needs to be dealt with and how the city needs to respond to it also.
Thank you for
and
your
then
Theo. That's time on that question. 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Next up is Marshall Albertson.
Hello, I'm Marshall Albertson. I guess the reason I'm running for assembly is I'm just seeing Sitka going in a bad direction. Before I came here in '99, I lived in a small community in Oregon named Oak Ridge, and same as almost exact same setup as Sitka, except it was up in the mountains, up in a bowl, 1,200 foot elevation. Looked just like Sitka, just without the ocean. Well, we had 2 mills there running full time. Life was great. You know, the whole community thrived, and just like Sitka used to. I mean, the mills had literally built Sitka. They built Oak Ridge, Oregon, and where I spent many, many years of my life. And I am just sad to see where we're going, because Oak Ridge has turned into basically a retirement community. A lot of folks with big money from California moved in there and kind of started buying houses and building big, expensive houses. Well, you know, it raised up all the other property rates and values and taxes and everything. And so we had the rich, we had the servants, you know, who worked at the grocery stores, McDonald's, and gas stations, who served them. And then we had our welfare class, because the jobs weren't there. There's no jobs. They're all gone, you know, and they slowly started, just like they're doing a lot around here. They slowly start taking things away from our youth. And I just want Sitka to do a turnaround. It's not too late. And we need to start getting some more, I think, more conservative ideas here in this town. And we need to get a good handle on a budget and actually stick to a budget like we do in our households. And I think with a lot of hard work from the whole community, I think we could do that. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Marshall. Next up is Frederick Olson Jr. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Uthgansi Hunodikyang. Place of one's own is my name in the Haida language. I'm of the Skudja-Uth clan, which is an eagle moiety with a beaver, frog, and sculpin crests. And so I'm a Haida in Tlingit Ani. And so I thank you for hosting this candidate forum on Tlingit Ani. And, you know, I come from working people. Both of my parents were born in Ketchikan, but don't hold that against us. You know, I did do the right thing eventually and moved to Sitka. My dad was a commercial fisherman and a union carpenter. My mother worked her way up from being a telephone operator to the head of Alascom. And after she retired, she made another career on the Alaska Marine Highway System as a cook and then a gift shop operator. And I did move to Sitka for love. I married Blossom Twitchell, and we're married with children, and family's number one for me. But of course, I'm running for this office, and that's because unlike some of the other candidates, I'm running because of government, not politics. And, you know, that's why I met with the city administrator, because the assembly works with the administrator and the mayor. And maybe some other candidates, you know, should run for mayor, but, you know, we're working for the assembly, running for the assembly. So I really appreciate this chance, and we'll say more. I hope to not be a broken record tonight, but yeah, I'm all about doing the job, and this is a tough time for everybody, and we're gonna roll up our sleeves and do the best we can for Sitka. Hawa, Gunash Chish, thank you.
Thank you for your response. Next up is Rebecca Himshoot. Could you introduce yourself and briefly explain why you're running for a seat on the Assembly?
Sure. Hi, thanks. I appreciate Raven Radio and the other media in town providing us a forum to get our ideas out. It's really hard right now in a pandemic to try to help people know what we're thinking and why we're running. So I appreciate the opportunity tonight. And I'm pleased at how engaged Sitka is with so many questions coming in. So thank you for hosting this. And then thank you to Sitka for being engaged and asking questions. I've been in Sitka for 22 years. I've been teaching at Kikuchihin for 16 years. And I'm running for assembly because everybody's already pointed out, this is an incredibly critical time. I think Sitka is a fabulous place, and I think Sitka can be an even better place, but we're gonna go through some really rough stuff in the next months and years. So I think at the assembly table right now, we're gonna need a really steady hand, and we're gonna need people who are willing to work hard, and I am, people with experience, which I have. And I feel really connected to a wide range of Sitkans, partly through teaching, partly through living here. I've gotten to know a lot of people where I can go and get expertise that I don't currently have, so I can ask questions and learn more as needed to make good decisions. And so I would invite people to learn as much as they can about every candidate and find the candidate, because we have such a choice this year. So find the candidates that best meet your values. And I guess I hope I've been earning Sitka's vote for the last 20 some years here in town. And I think our assembly has a really important job ahead. So I would appreciate learning more from the other candidates and Sitkans being able to make a good choice on October 6th.
Thank you for your response. And last up on this question, Steve Lee.
My Korean name is Lee Yong-soo. It means water dragon. My name is Steve Lee in English. I am 44 years old. I have a beautiful girlfriend named Zipra who works in Kenny's. She is native, Alaska Native, Raven. And I live in Alaska for 8 years. I live in Juneau for 2 before moving to Sitka. I cannot think of a beautiful place to have called home for 6 years. And I was born in Texas, Killeen, Texas. I spent my time in California, Hawaii, and South Korea, where I spent 7 years as a Buddhist monk. I am extremely passionate about people and enjoy opportunity to lend a hand and take pride in serving people. I spent many years working at Kenny's Walk before translating my current job as a search driver as I retired. I'm too young to retire, but but now I'm working at Sitka Counseling as a provider, training to be a counselor. I love to help people. I love Sitka and all the opportunities that I had to present and active with the community. As you know, I ran for assembly last year, but I lost, and I'm trying again because I never give up. I'm running for Sitka Assembly because I believe that we as a community must restore transparency and accessible to the seeing an increase of young and working class families leaving at a devastating rate, and we need to act swiftly if you want to Sitka to strive. I also want to focus on climate change. I was talking to some folks yesterday, and I like to be involved in climate change. I did some research, and the most important in my life is education. And like I said, I like to help the community and support, and I like to serve for the people of Sitka. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of the candidates, for answering that initial question. Our first question about policy is relating to the budget. And so we will be going, the next person, the second person who answered that question will be the first, and so on and so forth. And I just want to remind listeners out there, if you didn't get the chance to ask a question in advance, you can call 747-5877 right now to ask your question, and we'll try to get in as many listener questions as we can. So here's our first question relating to policy. Sitka is anticipating decreases in sales tax revenue, raw fish taxes, and other revenue sources in the coming year. How do you propose to make up for anticipated budget shortfalls in the coming fiscal year? Do you have any ideas aside from raising rates or taxes for balancing the municipal budget? So we'll start with Diana Dapsevich on this question.
Okay, so that is a great question. I think, I know I've heard a lot of, or some other candidates pretty much mostly talk about taxes. I think there's a lot of ways that we can really fix our economic situation that don't involve taxes necessarily. I'm really looking mostly to fix our budget, but also at the same time reduce the burden on residents. So I think what we really need to work on is controlling our spending and our debt accumulation as well, and importantly look for ways to refinance our current debt, and just like continually be looking for ways to do opportunities for this. Other things that I think that we need to do is hold off on some long-term development projects in order to address the more current community needs and get the money more in the hands of the community. We need to have a city with like a strong workforce, and I think we really need to be investing in more long-term employment opportunities, year-round employment opportunities is what I mean, and higher wages for employees here, because if people have more money in their pockets, they're going to spend more money in the community, and that's going to get us more money to the city. I mean, it's pretty standard. Yeah, thank you.
All right, next is Crystal Duncan.
I'm going to start off by saying nobody could see COVID coming, and that was devastating economically, and we're not even through it. We still have unknowns related to what will the overall impact be on the economy. And so starting there, I think supporting Sitkans is going to be really important moving forward. And yet we have to figure out how are we going to do that. I think we need to look to other funding sources and possibilities that exist out there. We need to be strategic in doing so. I think controlling spending isn't obvious. We need to tighten the budget until we can get back to a place where we can anticipate revenue coming in. And my goal is not to raise taxes, but my goal is to be strategic. So I have a business background. And what does that mean? That means that we look at things like how do you increase revenue, but how do you also strategically use debt? We're going to have to really work hard this year to help people get through it. But that's something that we're committed to. I can say I look at the faces in the room, and I heard that come out in the first answers, because people who are struggling are our neighbors. They were furloughed when they didn't anticipate that. Some of them weren't able to come back to work. Some of them are struggling to show up to work because of childcare issues. This just basically builds on why I'm running for assembly. But with the business background, I think I would rely on our finance department to be competent in the decisions that they're making moving forward. And I look forward to serving on the assembly so that we can put a fine-tooth comb to what it is that we're trying to roll out, because we're not through COVID and we don't have all the answers. But I do like how we were able to access and make decisions so that we could tap into other resources that could help to get us through it. So I don't have all the answers, but I promise, Sitka, I'm going to work for you, and I'm going to dive into it because I can see it. It's happening every day that people are struggling just to get by.
Thank you, Crystal. Leo Jimmy, you're up next.
Can I have that question repeated, please?
No problem. Sitka is anticipating decreases in sales tax revenue, raw fish taxes, and other revenue sources in the coming year. How do you propose to make up for anticipated budget shortfalls in the coming year? And do you have any ideas aside from raising rates or taxes for balancing the municipal budget?
Thank you. As far as the taxes, I don't want to have anything raised. I know we got a budget we've got to work on that's got to be balanced. And as I've been looking over what's in the city through the city site, still working on making heads and tails of that. And as well as talking with folks that have been on the assembly before and current ones to help understand this as I move forward. I know the taxes are a question also. I don't want to have anything raised, and we need to find ways to make things more affordable. The cost of living here is high. We all know, and folks have moved away, businesses are closed. I think at some point we need to start trying to work back the other way, help the businesses to stay open, the ones that are here, and then you know, also bring the fishermen in on that and find out what's where they're at with what needs they need and how that taxes work also. Yeah, we can't afford to raise anything more. I mean, especially with the COVID going, you know, we got 2021 coming in. We have no revenues coming in. So it's just, there's a lot of work to be done coming up, and we just got to wait and see how it goes. I guess I'm kind of lost of words there for that, but yeah.
Thank you for your answer, Leo. And next is Marshall. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's okay. Thank you. Well, first of all, I think something Leo just said, I think one valuable asset and we really need to speak to is our fishermen here in town, because they're all businessmen like myself. They are all each an individual businessman, and they have some great ideas for bringing in more revenue. I was talking to one of them earlier today. Another thing is recycling here in town. You know, we spend a fortune sending everything out of here. You know, there's got to be, I mean, our cardboard, paper, our plastic, you know, we got the baler and stuff for the plastic, but, you know, I think that plastic, that bale is like worth about $50. You know, when I think it's a 4x4x8, based about the size of a cord of wood. The new baler might be a little bit tighter, I don't know, but I think if we could start addressing that, I mean, I wish we had an incinerator still, so where we could, you know, burn a lot of our waste like we used to. And, you know, that would save a huge amount of money. The second thing is going through some numbers today. I think we could save, you know, at least $1.5 million with the Sitka Community Hospital that we had budgeted for it. But now that it's owned by Search, I'm sure that money isn't going to be spent, have to go to unless there's some deal with that money already obligated that I don't know about. But that's another good thing. Put off some of these long-term projects. You know, I mean, there's some things I know we can't put off. There's some things I know from working the electrical system here in Sitka for 20 plus years, being a line clearance expert, that I realize there's some infrastructure we have to do. And I know Green Lake Road, I know the poles and everything there are rotting and whatnot. I think if we can't necessarily put off all projects, but several projects I think we could put off and use that money elsewhere. And I definitely am not for raising any more taxes. This city needs to start living within its budget, just like all of us have to do at our home. And
2-minute time limit is up on that question.
That's what we have to do. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Next up is Frederick Olson Jr. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Well, go ahead, please.
Sure. Sitka is anticipating decreases in sales tax revenue, raw fish taxes, and other revenue sources in the coming year. How do you propose to make up for anticipated budget shortfalls in the coming fiscal year? And do you have any ideas aside from raising rates or taxes for balancing the municipal budget?
Thanks. Yeah, this is where, of course, strategic planning and long-range thinking comes into play. And, you know, we'd want to use our government-to-government relationships, whether that's some more of COVID-19 appropriations, you know, federally or state, and then capital improvements, you know, those can mean jobs for people. One thing, senior tax, I don't want that on the table. And as far as new revenue, you know, there's a lot of excitement around the fishing fleet and, you know, boat owners about a haul out, and that could be really good. And that's not only a win-win for the local fishing fleet, but guess what? A boat haul out will use more electricity. And so some of that electricity we're not selling, the city's not selling, you know, maybe could make up some of that gap. And so some of these things can feed on themselves. And, you know, Administrator Leach really looks like he's up for the job. I think Sitka could be happy about that. You know, one of the things he was saying they did right away was cut 10% in the budget. You know, that's tough, but You know, the city's already looking ahead, and I'd be proud to be honored to be involved in that process. And also, let's not forget the Sitka tribe. You know, there's a lot of programs that could be enhanced, you know, and some might say, oh, government jobs, but, you know, someone's government jobs is another person's Coast Guard, you know, and so, you know, if you like the bus, you know, the tribe was instrumental in that here. And so there's on and on. There's a lot of things we can do, you know, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Thanks.
All right. Next up is Rebecca Himshoot.
Thanks. Well, obviously this is a really tough time. And I want to point out a couple of things that I think are assets in the community. I may not be able to give you specific ideas of what we're going to do to increase revenues or decrease expenditures, but I will say we are well positioned in a few things. For example, Harrigan Centennial Hall and our public library were recently refurbished. So those things are in place and we don't have to worry about those for a while. Other parts of the infrastructure need some attention, absolutely. But some things are okay and we're gonna be okay. I wanna point out that we've been through tough times before. The mill closed, SJ closed, and each time Sitkans came back with resilience, they came back with creativity, we got through it, and we will get through this too. It's gonna be hard, I don't think we've hit bottom yet, but you know, small businesses are the cornerstone of rural Alaska. That's one of the things that we're gonna need to do in the short term is keep those businesses going by hook or by crook, whether we use federal money to help sustain businesses through this or whatever we have to do to keep our businesses going is kind of the short-term focus. And then long-term, we need to not lose sight of the fact that we will get through this one way or the other. And when we do, what is our vision for Sitka down the road? And if there are some things we can do, I've heard ideas here tonight, if there are things we can do to save some money now, how are we gonna spend that money? So we're gonna need to prioritize and we're gonna need to really look at what can we do? What do we have to do? Some things we don't have a choice on due to regulations or it's debt or whatever. So there are some things that we don't get to choose what to do. But where we have choices, what will our choices be? And our investments early in life, supporting families through childcare, affordable cost of living, good education, those pay dividends down the road. Let's not lose sight of down the road. Thanks.
Thank you, Rebecca. Steve, your response, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, ma'am, thank you. As you know, I was a COVID-19 positive. I went through a lot of stuff and suffering, financial wise, and quarantined 2 weeks. My girlfriend couldn't go to work for 2 weeks, and it was really hard financial issue. First of all, I'd like to say we must lower the tax. I think right now it's 6%. I think 4% will be good, or 3%. The cost of living here is really ridiculous. There's a lot of people suffering from the COVID-19. How are we going to be able to live here and, you know, work at the same time? You need 2 jobs to order to get that payment to pay your bills, your rent, and stuff like that. You can't even go adventures. And, you know, the most important is the tax needs to come down. And I don't want elders paying taxes. And like I said today, I read a newspaper, the haul out did not pass. I'm very disappointed. We have to use the budget wisely and knowledge in the future. And hopefully that the 8 candidates is running for assembly here, I know you guys will make a difference. I believe in you guys. And like I said, the cost of living here is very expensive. Like I said last year, lower the tax, we're going to hit some serious crisis. And guess what? My prediction came true this year. We should have known and be prepared for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And the last person to answer this question is Amy Bethune. Would you like me to repeat the question? No,
thank you. So there's no magic answer, silver bullet for such a financial shortfall that we may be looking at. we obviously have to keep the cost of city government down as low as possible. And no one wants to make deep cuts. That's never fun. And I don't either, but I would like to focus on our core services, our police and our emergency services, our infrastructure needs, and our education are some of the basic things that city government provides to its citizens. And prioritizing those, even though there's other things we'd like to have, I think is going to be necessary. One of the things we need to do is to support businesses, as others said, so that they can grow. There are some other communities that are doing things like opportunity zones, where new businesses, incentivizing new businesses. So perhaps for encouraging new business establishment so that we can grow our tax base and increase our income, we could do something like having a first year of taxes, tax abeyance for the first year so they can build capital. I know that perhaps if a company is able to add jobs, a certain number of jobs over a given time period, there's a discount or a rebate on their city taxes, perhaps at the end of the year. So there are some things that we could consider that would really encourage growth and can help provide more income into our budget. I think somebody else, I think Diana mentioned that refinancing our debt, and that is really important. We have an enormous amount of, I think we're second highest in Alaska in overall debt load, second to Anchorage. And we have a lot fewer people paying into city services than Anchorage does. So that's a pretty big concern. And I know some has already been refinanced. I'm in support of that. Interest rates are really low right now. And I am in support of refinancing the rest of that. I understand we can refinance our bonds. And so looking into and continuing down that road. I don't think there's any way we can pay our debt off without really increasing our business and infrastructure or economic development. And
on that, Amy.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That was question number 2. So it's very important that we move pretty quickly this evening because we have to make it through quite a few questions. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to a question about public health, and this will go to Crystal Duncan first. The question is, what obligation does government have to protect and promote public health? And it's a 2-part question. So what obligation does government have to protect and promote public health, and where and from whom should city officials receive public health guidance?
So I started off by introducing myself and letting you know that I work for a healthcare organization on the local campus of our healthcare organization. So it's important. You can't put it any other way. Who is protecting us through this time? Incident Command, which is headed by scientists and medical professionals. They're the people that I rely on. We get updates through email as far as how is Sitka doing. I also am an ANTHC employee, so I also get updates on Anchorage area. And the bottom line is the pandemic presented a whole new set of scenarios that we weren't anticipating. So our response to that was kind of on the fly in the minute, and we're learning as we go. So as we went through this, just as a community member, who did I rely on? I relied on the fact that we had a number of organizations that could look into this and make recommendations that were based on science and information that was coming to them, and they could come with a consolidated message so that we didn't panic and so that we knew moving forward that they had our best interests. So do I think our city government is responsible for kind of helping us process and move through this? Absolutely. Do I think that it should be up to a city administrator with no health background? No, and I don't think he does as well. Do I think other organizations need to get involved and be pulled in, like the tribe, which they were, or other healthcare with vested interest in keeping Sitka safe? Absolutely. I think we look to the CDC when it comes to COVID, and I think we look to other patterns that we've noticed throughout throughout Alaska. So how have they been able to prevent the spread? Should we implement that here as best practice? And we're really learning as we go. So I'm appreciative that COVID did not take off and that we're moving forward responsibly and together and just trying to keep Sitkin safe.
All right. Thank you, Crystal. Next is Leo Jimmy. The question is, what obligation does government have to protect and promote public health, and where and from whom should city officials receive public health guidance?
I think that we should be getting our help from Search as our hospital, and I think they've been doing a pretty good job from the beginning of getting our information to us and our email or phone calls, letting us know what's going on. As I've gotten notifications from them, you know, from the start of when this COVID started, and also our appointments, and then also information from our fire department and the volunteers there, letting us and keeping us up to date on the levels of where we're at in this pandemic. And then as far as the assembly goes, I've heard a number of different opinions on that, but I do believe that they should have a little bit of a say on that, and they should get their information from the correct places, from the CDC or the Search, you know, the fire department, and as well as work with them together to get the information back out to the public. I think that's about all I got to say on that.
All right, thank you, Leo. Marshall, what obligation does the government have to protect and promote public health, and where and from whom should city officials receive public health guidance? You have to unmute yourself there.
I'm sorry about that. You know, that's not too long ago, I would have said, oh, the WHO, you know, to begin with for the big stuff, and then, you know, our federal government and our scientists. But kind of after this whole COVID thing, you know, we found the WHO, they were covering stuff up and not putting out all the facts. So an organization that we have relied on to put out good information worldwide, not just in this country, has let us down. Then, you know, I'd say the CDC, but now we see after all this horrific blow up and 200,000 people died of COVID and everything, now they admit 2 weeks ago that all their numbers are skewed. Only about, I think it was 8% of the cases that they claimed were actually people actually died of COVID, which was less than 10,000 people. So, you know, I'm really kind of confused right now about who we would want to get our news from, because now we go back to the scientists and the doctors who we're supposed to trust. But then we have, first, you don't wear masks. They're absolutely not needed. Then you do wear masks. They have flip-flopped on the American people so many times. It's okay to go out and protest in groups or rob and loot and riot without a mask. That's okay, but you can't, you know, go to a rally without a mask. So I'm really kind of confused. You know, I'd like to wish we could trust the WHO, the CDC, and our federal government, but I guess we got to take it all with a grain of salt. And as Americans, we should not be forced by our government to do anything. We need to fill ourselves full of information and then make the best decision for ourselves, our family, and our community. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Frederick Olson. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Thanks. Sorry, only because of the first part, yeah.
No problem. The question is, what obligation does government have to protect and promote public health? Where and from whom should city officials receive public health guidance?
Thanks. Yeah, it's extremely important. And in my view, most of what city government does should protect the health of the citizens, directly or indirectly. And Sitka's very lucky to have Search here. You know, it's a trend throughout the nation that rural hospitals are going out of business. And with Search, very strong, Search is actually growing. There's some new things happening. It's going to be very good for Sitka, a lot of jobs, etc. And the decisions need to be science-based. You know, I'm halfway through my first term on the Sitka Community Health Council. That council was formed as a result of the merger. And there's great leadership around the table. Dr. Bruhl's the chair, you know, you can trust him for information. And there's good communication with the community. I think that's very important. You need to have leadership, you need to have fact-based decisions, but you also need to communicate with the public so you don't have these kind of miscommunications and pointing fingers and all this kind of thing. I think that's very important, especially at this time. That would be important any time. But with this global pandemic, you know, you're looking over your shoulder for the boogeyman all the time. So it's very important to get the facts and not just to sit at home thinking you know better than the doctors. Gunashjish.
Thank you very much for that response. And next is Rebecca Himshoot. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I've got it. Thank you. Well, the basic function of government, any government, is to provide for the common good, whether that's through infrastructure, through education, public education, or public safety. So the role of government, of course, is to provide for citizens what we collectively can better provide for ourselves. So with that in mind, public health falls into that for sure, especially during a pandemic. We knew with COVID early on, we were told and it was understood that if we took the right measures, it would look like we didn't need to do anything. And I think in Alaska, we particularly have succeeded in taking the right measures that were extreme, without a doubt. But as a result, it looks like it was no big deal. And I'm putting it in past tense and it's not. So I think the places we look to for guidance should be our state and local public health officials. Let the people who specialize in these things and have the expertise in these things guide us. But then I think we also need to get input and feedback from the citizens, from the community, on the impacts of the decisions that are being made. So even though the guidance will come from the experts, it has to be considered in light of the community. And there may be times when measures have to be more extreme than suggested or relaxed from what's suggested that fits for each community. And then I think we need to keep in mind that public health, obviously right now the crisis is COVID. We can't emphasize that enough, but public health includes long-term public health. How are we supporting families? How are we nurturing healthy young people so that they can have really productive and successful lives? And that has to be on our radar even during COVID times. So we have to keep the current crisis in mind, but keep our eye also on the long term. Thanks.
All right, thank you for that response. Steve Lee, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, the question is, what obligation does government have to protect and promote public health, and where and from whom should city officials receive public health guidance?
First of all, COVID-19 virus is a man-made lab in China and Wuhan. To let you know, the information about China is a man-made, and we're not expecting COVID-19. I do support the health, not 100%. There's disagreements. If it's so very important, it's so virus, why are we having people coming in? I don't understand. We have people coming in from Alaska Airlines. We're having, stores is opening. We have businesses opening. If it's so dangerous, why we didn't shut it down? You know, it's not seriously COVID-19. There is people who die from COVID. There is a very serious illness to it, but I don't believe public official 100%, maybe 80%, 90%. But I want to thank Search for preparing it. They were doing a wonderful job during that pandemic. Once the Alaska Airlines bring all the passengers, we start going up COVID-19 positives. like I said, if it's very dangerous, why do we open, airport, people coming in? I don't think that's serious, but there is some serious flu that's going around. It kills people. And like I said, if we're serious about it and believe the public health, they should have done that. But I believe it's a man mind made from the lab. And like I said, I support the public 80 to 90%, but not 100%. It's not accurate. And I disagreed some decision that public official made.
Steve, that's
and I
time.
do believe,
Steve,
and I do believe, yeah, okay,
that's
thank you.
time on your answer. All right, Amy Bethune, the question, would you like me to repeat it, or are you?
No, I think I have it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So what obligation does government have to protect and promote public health? Certainly education is a big one. In the case of the pandemic, the issuing of guidelines, I think, is really important. I do think that, as we've seen this year, we have to be really careful to balance mandates with personal freedoms and liberties. And I think that as we educate people, and that generally people of goodwill care about their neighbors and want them to stay healthy, and can follow those guidelines on their own without it being enforced, because we get into some sticky civil liberties areas when we do that. I think that from whom should we receive guidance? Obviously, we look to federal and state guidance, public health agencies and officials. I will say, and again, in regards to this situation that we're in, I have never in my life seen the magnitude or been in the middle of such an information war. There's so much information out there. So much of it is contradictory. Lots of people are saying, but where we are now doesn't make sense. We should be opening up. And there's information flying. And I think that in general, that this will all settle out, and we'll know at looking back what actually happened. But in the meantime, I don't want to add to the fire. And I think that everybody is doing the best they can individually, as with the information that they know. So I think that we should be gentle with each other in this time, because that can cause a lot of division, and I don't want that. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And then the last person to answer this question, Diana Dapsevich. Would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I have it. Thank you. So what obligation does government have to protect and promote public health? I think absolutely part of government's obligation is to promote public health. I think it's really important for the government to facilitate the flow of information to the community, for the most part, largely so that people can make their own informed decisions about their own health. I think that the government should consider issuing, public health guidelines and even mandates in more like critical situations, such as the situation that we find ourselves in right now. But of course, using information from experts, and also tailoring that information and tailoring those guidelines to the specific needs of the city and what is realistic for citizens, just in order to mitigate any impact on their lives, which we've seen a lot of right now. I think where and from whom city officials should receive public health guidance, I definitely agree with a lot of people, obviously scientists and medical professionals, local and state level experts. I know Dr. Bruhl here in Sitka, Dr. Zink in the state level has been really helpful and very informative in helping us here in Sitka. I also think that we should look to other similar countries in Alaska and even around the country, and just see how they have responded to situations like this or other public health issues, and how that had worked out for them as well.
All right, thank you so much for all of your responses to that question. The next question is relating to affordability. And The question is, and it will go to Leo Jimmy first, several candidates are campaigning to make Sitka more affordable. What actionable proposals do you have for making Sitka more affordable?
Thanks. I think for making it more affordable is, again, not be raising any taxes or anything in Sitka, and try to find ways of what's going, how to be able to bring down basically the cost of living, housing, groceries, food, bills, utilities, which also leads to the city budget, being able to balance that out, find out where we can make things more reasonable. Along with that, being able to find a way, if there's any way possible, seeing everything going up, you don't see the wage going up. So there's, you got to be able to find a way to raise the standard wage of what people are getting paid in their paychecks. I know there used to be a program back in Ketchikan years ago. I don't remember how they did it, but there was whether it was a grant or a fund to help the employer, and it added, $5 or $10 to what they were paying to a program. If there was something like that to be able to help, I know that would be one of the main things to be able to look at, which I've been trying to find out how that worked again. But Sitka's a great place. It's got to find ways to get things balanced out, lowered, because more and more people are moving, packing up, closing businesses, moving out due to the high cost of living.
That's time on that question, Leo. And we're going to move on to Marshall for the answer to this question. Again, I'm going to repeat it. Several candidates are campaigning to make Sitka more affordable. What actionable proposals do you have for making Sitka more affordable?
Okay, we're limited on time. I'm going to talk really fast. First of all, we'll get some land set aside, whether it's from the city, state, mental health, or whatever. We'll get that. We'll get it flattened out. We'll get in some modular homes. Right now, they're built with 2x6 construction. They're not like the old trailer house with 2x2 construction. They're built better than stick homes. They're insulated. They got like a 92% energy rating. A few years ago, we were trying to do this. We were going to get 3 to 5 year old 2 and 3 bedroom houses moved up here. At that time, it was $28,000 to the dock that we had a contract set up with this outfit down south. This is a few years later, it's probably going to cost about $45,000 to get them to the dock. But you get it on the property, you do a cul-de-sac or whatever type of development that you choose to do on whatever land you have. You set them up, you have them all their utilities, water, garbage, electricity, so the city's getting their part for the future. But the thing is, then you sell these 1-bedroom houses for $110,000, or 2-bedroom for $110,000, $120,000 a piece. You sell the 3 bedrooms for about $135,000, $140,000 a piece. But the thing is, you own the property that's under your home. It's not like being in a trailer house or trailer court where, you're paying somebody $500 or $600 or $700 a month space, and you're paying your mortgage on your trailer or something. These are beautiful modular homes with different facades. They look like houses nowadays, and you will own the property. And that is a starter home. That is an affordable home. That is a home that these kids could come out of high school with a $17, $22 an hour job, which most of my employees make minimum of $15, and they could go to the bank, Alps, on a $140,000 loan. They're talking about, maybe $750, $800, $850 a month payment. That's affordable housing. And that's what needs to happen in this town, because they have talked about it for 22 years, and I will do something about it. I promise you, not to mention.
That's time on that one.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Frederick Olson Jr., you're next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, the question is, several candidates are campaigning to make Sitka more affordable. What actionable proposals do you have for making Sitka more affordable?
Well, I think having a job can make a place more affordable. And where the assembly can support local small businesses or big businesses, we will. And, you know, one really good example is that the haul out idea. Plus, like I said before, that one doesn't just have boat related jobs, but you're also going to be selling more electricity. And affordable housing is a huge need in the city and, you know, all over the place. And, you know, I spoke with the administrator, and there's definitely land, there are options, but, you know, that's a little bit of a complicated issue. It's not just an easy slam dunk, but we can work with planning and zoning. You know, all of this stuff there's a lot of, like I said, light at the end of the tunnel. And then there's partnerships. You know, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. You know, there's the Baranof Housing Authority, there's the beginning of the land trust. You know, there's different ideas, and you don't have to get locked into one or the other. They can all work together. And, you know, if you don't fully fund your schools, it's not going to be an affordable place to live. You know, like it or not, in some ways, our schools are daycare. You know, they do a lot of things. And besides just teach our kids, you know, a lot of kids eat food at school that they might not get at home. And if you take that away, it's going to be a lot more difficult for the families of Sitka.
All right, thank you for that response. Steve Lee, you're next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am.
The question is, several candidates are campaigning to make Sitka more affordable. What actionable proposals do you have for making Sitka more affordable?
First of all, I agree with Leo and Marshall about affordable housing. Like Marshall said earlier, the most important we have to do is get a home for them to start coming here, to go to school, to get a job. Second of all, Fred was talking about the haul out. I totally agree with Fred with the haul out. And I know we can lower the taxes if we vote against. So if we vote and get together and lower the tax, we can do it. But if not, no, at least, you know, the police department and fire department, you know, we should give them a raise, and all the people like employees that working on different stores, I think they should get more raise so they can be, you know, buying stuff and will be affordable. And like I said, we need a structure, we need a foundation, we need to communicate, sit on the table and say, hey, Sitka is too high. We have to do some serious communication here, and let's get to it. And if I'm elected, I will do my best. And like I said, I'm not all talk, but I do my actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I just realized, Rebecca, I'm sorry I skipped you in the order. I think you were before Steve. Would you like to respond to this question next?
Of course, anytime is a good time. Affordability is a major concern for the entire community. It is very expensive to live in Sitka. There are things about that we cannot change. It will always be expensive to live here, but what can we do? And I love the part of the question that said actionable. And I'm going to disappoint because I can't tell you exactly what I would do. I'll tell you the kinds of things I would like to look into. Obviously housing, and it's been said more than once. Specifically though, I think we need to work with really capable private developers in a public-private partnership to see if we can get some affordable housing here, one way or the other. You know, group housing, apartments, there are lots of different ways we could go, but we've known this for a long time, and I think it's time to do something about it. We need to be really careful to avoid any decisions that are going to make our rates go up. So we've experienced that in recent history, and we can't necessarily change what's already been done, but how can we be really careful in the future with our decision making, making sure that we're fully informed before we make a decision with the kinds of impacts that we've seen recently in our city services and expenses to the community. And then I want us to be careful not to make decisions where we save money this year that are that's going to cost us down the road. So that requires some vision and some planning and some strategic thinking. What do we do now that works now, but also in the long term? And then I've been talking with a lot of business owners in Sitka recently to educate myself and learn more about it. And I just see our small businesses as being the #1 way to generate jobs, and as much as possible living wage jobs that can translate into a higher quality of life for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you for your response. Next up on this question is Amy.
Thanks. Yeah, there's no easy answers to this, and there are things people have already done here in Sitka that have helped. I will start by saying, you know, we can start by keeping our tax rates as low as possible. Obviously, we have to pay for city services and minimum city services, but keeping that off the plates of families who are working at middle or low and receiving middle or lower incomes is going to be really important, especially. I think with utility rate increases, the overall utility rate situation needs addressing, but at least right now is where we are. We can keep perhaps rate increases at the level of going up just to meet the level of inflation. And so that's a possibility we could look into. I think there are, as we've mentioned before, if there's looking for efficiencies in the budget and reducing our spending so that we don't have to increase taxes. Do we need new vehicles as often as we have saved and scheduled to buy them? You know, we have 14 miles of road. Obviously, we need to keep our emergency vehicles in top shape, but I think that perhaps we could go longer. And so some of those things, just efficiency in the city budget would help keep from adding to the burden of people. Obviously, and like Rebecca just said, focus on supporting our businesses and bringing in more income to the city, and so that we can share city services. Increasing the tax base so that we can provide for city services across more people and businesses. Economic development. I think an easy kind of low-hanging fruit would be to do what we can to maximize our cruise ship industry. You know, obviously, it's
that we're out of time.
Okay, are we? Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. Next is Diana Dapsevich. Same question for you, Diana.
Okay, so I mean, undoubtedly, Sitkans are experiencing a lot of hardship, especially due to the high cost of living here, and that was before everything that happened this year. But I think affordability is a challenge that the other candidates kind of touched on. It's a challenge that requires multiple approaches and collaborative efforts. But I think housing stability needs to be a priority just to keep our community intact and keep the people that we have here. And that means looking at housing options and cooperative programs, especially for at-risk populations, shelters for the homeless and those in need, also accommodating independent living and fixed incomes for our senior residents, making sure that they can afford to stay here, and reducing the burden on residents that come from diverse backgrounds. I know a lot of them maybe aren't very proficient in English. And so I think we can definitely help them out a lot more. We can look at code changes just to make permitting a lot easier for ADUs, and just encourage constructing smaller homes just to reduce lot sizes, reducing the cost of land, and just look at smaller home development. I think also, I know a lot of people have talked about this previously, but I don't want Sitka to become a place full of vacation homes. So creating incentives for long-term rentals is really important, I think. And I also kind of want to echo what Amy just said about really focusing uplifting our small businesses, promoting the industries that we have now. We want to make Sitka a place that people want to stay and people want to come here also, because that's of course going to help our tax base and make it more affordable for everybody. So supporting the current businesses, supporting the current services, that includes like the school district.
That's time, Diana, I'm sorry. All right, moving on. Next and last person to answer this question, Crystal Duncan. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I got it. So when I think about affordability, I'm going to break it up into 3 areas. They've been talked about. So housing, putting people to work so that they could afford to pay their bills. And then there's a potential with clean energy. But then I'm going to veer off track and let you know, just like Rebecca had stated, I don't have anything that's actionable. And here's why. I'm not running because I have all of the solutions. I'm running because I think I can pull that out of community members who have that expertise. So when it comes to, for example, affordable housing, this has been going back decades that we've been trying to solve this, and we still don't have the solution. So for me, it would be a reliance on a task force to look into it and make suggestions, people who are dealing with this issue, because this is not my area of expertise, but I hear people who are concerned about this. And so therefore I'm concerned about this. So I think when I get on the assembly, it's basically finding ways to tap into the expertise so that we can make it actionable and I can bring it forward with co-sponsorship by working with other assembly members so that we could tackle these problems. Housing is the big one, but businesses as well. So I have a business background, but that doesn't make me an expert. The reason that I'm going to succeed in working with businesses is because I'm going to reach out to them and say, what do you know about providing job opportunities in Sitka? And what sort of support do you need from the assembly when you're trying to keep people employed so that they can, like I said, pay their bills? The clean energy, there's so much potential there, and I'd like to explore that when I get on the assembly. So those are kind of the 3 big areas that came to mind. But again, this is happening in my DMs. People are coming to me and they're saying, Crystal, I want you to look into this. And I respond back, how do I do that? What are your thoughts on there? Give me some points so that I can move on it, because I'm not an expert in areas. I know a little about a lot, and I want to learn more when I got on the assembly, and it's basically borrowing information from people who have that expertise.
Thank you, Crystal. All right, since we are, and now it is 7:45 p.m. You're listening to Raven Radio KCAW Sitka. We have about 45 minutes left, 50 minutes left in our forum this evening. So we're going to go ahead and shift the time limit for the answers to your questions to 1 minute so that we can get to as many questions as possible. I know some of these questions are complex, but I ask that you keep it as brief as possible in your answer and respect the timer as best you can. So keep an eye on that timer. So the next question is a question about the police department, and this will go to Marshall Albertson first. So the question is, the city has settled 4 major lawsuits over police conduct in the last 5 years. Do you think the culture within the department needs to change? And as an assembly member, what do you think should be done to reduce the risk of these costly lawsuits?
Well, I think we kind of already done it. For the most part, I think we got a great chief in there, Beatty, and I think I have sat down and had a couple conversations with him in his office, and I think he is the right man for the right job for Sitka at this point in time. I think he's going to put together one heck of a law enforcement squad, and I think he already has great members, and I think he will hold people accountable if they do something out of line or nefarious, and if they do, I'm sure he'll hold them to account and deal with them quickly and responsibly. So I think we cannot put the sins of the new man at the head of the office, for sins of the past. So let's give the man a chance. Me on the assembly, I will stay in contact with the chief, and I will get his feedback, and he knows how the community feels, and he knows that he's there to do a job. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's next is Fred Olson.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, the police, of course, are very important to any community. And when you have 4 different lawsuits in such a short amount of time, there's obviously something going on with the culture. But you see, yes, there is a new chief, and as an assembly member, I support the chief 100% and would work with them, work with the police force as smoothly as possible. Same with the fire department, you know, any of our departments, but especially we need the police, you know. They do so much, they protect us when we need it, you know. We could go on and on about the police, but thanks.
Thank you for your response. Next up is Rebecca Himshoot.
Well, we've already heard the police have a super important job to do, and I'm kind of a career public servant in a way myself. And so I've had to walk that fine line of doing the best I can in all situations, but also needing to be held accountable for what I do. And so if there are problems in the police department, we need to know about it. And I think the Assembly is in a position to make sure that all departments are as functional as can be. We have a new human resources person in the city. We have a new police chief. I think things are looking up, but we need to stay vigilant. We always need to keep an eye on things. That's the job of the Assembly. So I think we need to support, but stay vigilant and make sure that the citizens' needs are being met and that the police have the support they need.
Thank you for your response. Steve Lee.
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Absolutely. The question is, the city has settled 4 major lawsuits over police conduct in the last 5 years. Do you think the culture within the department needs to change? And as an Assembly member, what do you think should be done to reduce the risk of these costly lawsuits?
Okay, the lawsuits was before his time. I met with Chief Beatty. I think he's a wonderful man. I think he will hold accountable what the officer would do under him leadership. I believe they knew they need a new police department. I went to jail in their jail cell. I visited, and I visit the office. What they need is our support, and I have a new police department in downtown in the middle. And like I said, all the officers and the police department, Chief Brady, you're doing a great job. Thank you for keeping Sitka safe. They're doing a wonderful job, and have faith in Chief Beatty. He will be the great leadership for his police department. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Amy.
Thank you. Yeah, there is going to be this period, and that we're in it, of sorting through issues and from the past. And I think that the culture is changing. I've also met with the chief and really like the changes he's making in the department. One of the problems has been in the past, we've been kind of viewed a stepping stone kind of department where new recruits will come in for a year or so, get some experience, and then go off to greener pastures. Well, he's made hires, the last, I think 5 hires he's made have an average of 15 years experience. And so he's really wanting to move it from a station that is a stepping stone to a place you can retire. And there's mentorship that's now available for newer recruits. And I think that the culture is changing, and I do want to support the chief and the police department and give them a chance. I think it's underway. In many ways, we're ahead of the curve nationally in addressing some of these issues at this point, given that this is such a hot issue in the country. So yeah, I appreciate them.
All right, thank you for your response. Diana Dapsevich, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, can you please repeat the question?
I can. The city has settled 4 major lawsuits over police conduct in the last 5 years. Do you think the culture within the department needs to change? As an Assembly member, what do you think should be done to reduce the risk of these costly lawsuits?
So I think, well, right now I know that Chief Beatty seems to be in a very interesting position, at least at an interesting time, and I think he's doing a wonderful job right now. I think as far as the Assembly goes, it is important to just work with the police force and mostly make sure that they're not overburdened right now. I think, and that's one way that we can really support them. My understanding is that one of the settlements recently allowed for an independent investigation on the police department, and I just I support that going forward and see where that takes us.
All right, thank you for your response. Next is Crystal Duncan.
Okay. 1 minute, this is going to be tough, so I'm going to go kind of quickly. I'm going to mention Chief Beatty. I don't know him. I look forward to getting to know him. I did, however, know his. Is it my turn?
I'm muted, aren't I?
Yeah, Marshall, it's Crystal's turn. Could you start her timer over, Rob?
I apologize, and I didn't realize I wasn't muted. I apologize.
That's okay. Go ahead, Crystal. You can start over.
Okay. I'll just go ahead and leave off with Rena Beatty. She's my elder. I had positive experiences, and the fact that she is the mother of Chief Beatty, I hold him in high regard because of that. Like I said, I don't know him. I look forward to getting to know him. The other one is very personal. So Mitchell Board is my oldest nephew, and he is at the police academy right now. He's going to be the newest addition to Sitka Police Department, and I think he's going to bring a lot to the department. Now, with that said, I think we're stagnant if we don't change, and I think I'm going to turn it from the police department onto myself. So I started a new position in January, and you constantly have to look at best practice and process improvement. So I think Chief Beatty is going to basically take the reins, and he's going to continue to look at the culture. I don't think it needs to. I hope lawsuits aren't the indicator that we're using as a measure of success. I think there are other things that we could put in place as accountability measures to ensure that we are keeping Sitkans safe and having a positive culture where people are safe and protected. Thank you.
Thank you. That's time. All right. The next person and last person to answer this question is Leo Jimmy.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I met with Chief Beatty several times on a number of different issues, and I think he's doing a great job. And moving forward, I do believe that he's going to be doing great things for the police department. You know, the past issues and lawsuits or whatever he had stepped into, I think they were getting resolved probably as best as they could between what he was doing and the city assembly. Yes, it was it was messy. It was not, you know, easy, but I don't believe that we'll have those same issues as, you know, it's under great leadership now and moving forward. And, you know, so far we haven't heard anything complaints. He's always been helpful when I go there. Willing to talk to you, return your phone calls, reach back out to you, which is breath of fresh air to me for what I, you know, in the past.
That's time on that question. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next question now. We have about 33 minutes left. We can get through a handful of questions in the next half hour. So the next question is going to go to Frederick Olson Jr. first. And the question is, do you believe systemic racism exists in Sitka? And if so, what measures should the Assembly take to address it?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think systematic racism kind of exists all over the place. And so I think you see it in Sitka sometimes. And I think from an individual standpoint or on the Assembly, you have to recognize it when you see it and gently call it out. And it doesn't have to recur over and over again. And I've done this, and I've had chairing meetings with, say, federal entities that you can tell, you know, that, like, for example, they're working with tribal sovereignty, but they don't want to wait for the tribal processes. You know, you could call that systematic racism, you know. And so I think it's important to not be racist yourself and to not let the systematic racism continue when you see it.
Thank you for your response. And next is Rebecca Hemschut.
Could you repeat the question, please?
I can, yes. Do you believe systemic racism exists in Sitka? If so, what measures should the Assembly take to address it?
Yes, I think that systemic racism is something that exists in the world. It doesn't really matter where you go or what you do, there will be racism. How you handle it is as important as recognizing that it exists. And then how you handle it as far as specific measures the Assembly could take, I think we need to look at bias and sensitivity training. And I think we can look to partners. We have a solid government-to-government relationship with STA. I think there are lots of places we can go in Sitka to inform ourselves. And I think it's on each citizen's shoulders to do that work. And then systemically, we need to do that work as well. So it's something that will be part of my decision-making and something that I will have in my awareness when I'm on the Assembly. Thanks.
Thank you. Steve Lee, your response?
Yes, I do. We do have systematic racism in Sitka. Do you remember when we had September 11 flags, American flag flying around the runabout? There's some people, doesn't agree with us, what we're doing, and they don't know why we're there at the runabout. That day we were celebrating respect for the firefighters who died and the police department who died during the Twin Tower that happened September 11. And another thing is I did talk to one of the BMM protests that was standing by himself at the runabout. I parked my car and I just talked, I had a few conversations with him and I say, hey, why are you carrying that BMM for? And he say he support them. Stuff that he likes to, be a part of the protest. And I say, hey, I'd like to communicate with you. Let's communicate. Let's go, have a coffee or have a dinner together.
Steve, that's time on that question.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to Amy, your response.
I've listened to residents, to friends of mine who are Alaska Native or African American, other minorities, and who have experienced racism here in Sitka in the past, and especially decades ago, it was a very big issue, and there are real wounds, and many of those are not healed yet. I think that I have trouble with the Assembly addressing it because I think that racism fundamentally comes out of a place in an individual's heart that is it's a problem with a personal attitude, and they have their own root issues that view people not as they really are, as valuable. They don't view them as valuable, they view them as less valuable. And so I'm not sure what the Assembly can do to actually change that root issue. They can do training, they could do resolutions, but ultimately I think it's an individual issue, and it's a real need. Yeah.
That's time. And Diana Dapsevich, your response to the question.
Can you repeat the question really quick?
Absolutely. The question is, do you believe systemic racism exists in Sitka? If so, what measures should the Assembly take to address it?
I do believe that systemic racism exists everywhere, and especially in Sitka, I think it's important to really pay attention to, because one thing about Sitka is it's such a diverse place. And I think it's the Assembly's role to just make sure that the services are provided to the public in a fair and equitable way. I think it's especially important for Assembly members to really listen, and not just listen, but engage with people who have experienced it, who are experiencing it, and just take everything to heart, because the diversity in Sitka is really one of the things that makes it a really special place. And I would love to see it a place that really uplifts the diversity and all the people here.
Thank you for your response. Crystal Duncan?
Okay, I'm going to struggle with this question as well because I need a lot of time for this one. So to answer your question outright, it absolutely does, and we can address it. So I think it's difficult for people to grasp at times because it's baked into the bread that we're eating. And so I want a 3-year term so that I can work and address these issues that exist. Now, how do we know that the system is built to elevate some while keeping others where they're at? We can look at disparities. So disparities in health, education, wealth, and then the one that I'm trying to work on tonight by being here is power and access. So our government system is currently made up of people that don't represent the community, and we all agree here, diversity is beautiful. We all can contribute in ways that it's just not coming and being brought out. It's not a discussion at the table, and it needs to be. So I had 1 minute and I'm running out of time. So I just want to let you know, this is the conversation that I want to engage in. And then you guys also put out a questionnaire that addressed this question, and I was able to go in depth there. So I appreciate it. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you, Crystal. And the next person to address the question is Leo Jimmy.
Yeah, thanks. I'm aware there is racialism here, and of course everywhere, as everyone else says, being able to deal with it. As far as from the assembly, I do believe that if it is dealt with or it gets brought forward to assembly, it needs to be done with respect on both ways, to the public and from the public. Also being done in a positive manner, and then the messages being put out and then taught of however to deal with these issues, whether it's in a protest or the 200-year information going back, also still needs to be done in a positive manner. And keep in mind that our younger generation is listening and watching to everything that we do as elders, and that we don't keep the cycle of what's going on today, because the racialism is, yes, it's happening, and it's not what was happening 200 years ago. You know, we've got our own issues, but yeah, moving forward, keep it going and positive.
Time on that one. I'm sorry about that, Leo. We're going to go ahead and go to Marshall now for the last response to this question. Marshall, do you believe systemic racism exists? If so, what measures should the Assembly take to address it?
Now, are you saying exist or exist here in Sitka?
Exists in Sitka.
No, I do not. Sure, there's probably some racist hearts in Sitka, but systemic means basically it's just rampant, and I absolutely do not believe that. I believe that the term racism has been so watered down and by the left that it's been, everybody is a racist. As soon as they don't agree with you, they call them a racist because they don't want to debate them on facts, and the term is getting so watered down. When we really do have racism, you know, it's may not be addressed, you know, and some people consider, you know, having a native preference higher at search, you know, they might consider that systemic racism. So, you know, the term is really getting watered down. And when we pick any one group over another group for anything, affirmative action, whatever, I mean, that's basically racism in a nutshell. We're saying you're not smart enough or good enough to get along on your own. So here, we need to do this for you. Thank you very much.
Time. All right. So we have just about half an hour left, a little under half an hour left. We're going to move on to the next question. And again, all of these questions have come from the listening community. And if you have a question, you still can call 747-5877. We still have quite a few to get to here. This question will go to Rebecca Himshoot first. And the question is, do you support funding Sitka schools to the cap? In other words, to the maximum allowed by state law for instructional expenses? And do you support continued funding for non-instructional items like the Blatchley swimming pool and partnering on insurance?
Well, since the question was asked as a do you, I can answer with a simple yes, but I would like to qualify my yes with a little bit more information. I've mentioned that investing in schools and young people is one of the best investments we can make. It's one of the most expensive investments we can make, but it is an investment. And the return on our investment is seen in fewer social services needed down the road, including jails, but also treatment facilities and that kind of thing. So I will always support funding to the CAP. And by funding non-instructional things, it helps us put more into instructional. So yes to both. And I can talk forever about education policy. So like Crystal, I'm having a hard time with 1 minute. We are going to have to prioritize, and I think we need to improve communication with the school district. We need our next superintendent, permanent superintendent, and we need to make sure that as our biggest budget item, we are hearing back and having a conversation with the school district on budget.
Thank you, Rebecca. Steve, do you support funding schools to the cap or the maximum allowable by state law for instructional expenses? And do you support continued funding for non-instructional items like the Blatchley swimming pool and partnering on insurance?
Yes, we should fund school to the maximum because I know that education is very important of lifestyle, life living. I do support the school Blatchley with swimming pool. I think more activities will bring out more future for the kids, for their life, what they're gonna be. They wanna be a swimmer, they can be a swimmer as a sports life. I think education should be funded to the max. And 100% I support. Yeah, and it's a both yes.
Thank you, Steve. Amy, your response. Oh, we're not hearing you, Amy. I'm sorry. Are you muted? Oh, can't hear you. We've lost your sound. Maybe take the headphones out and see if that changes something. Let's. While you address that, I still can't hear you. How about we have you disconnect and reconnect, and we'll ask another candidate the question next. All right. So next down the list is Diana. Could you answer the question for me, please? I'll reread it. It's, do you support funding Sitka schools to the cap? In other words, to the maximum allowed by state law for instructional expenses? And do you support continued funding for non-instructional items like the Blatchley swimming pool and partnering on insurance?
Yes, I do support funding the school district to the cap. The school, education, that is an investment in our future, and it leads to a skilled workforce. It helps build our economy, and I think let's see, the second part of that question, funding for. Well, sorry, can you repeat the second part of that question?
Non-instructional items like the Blatchley swimming pool and partnering on insurance.
Yes, so I do support funding non-instructional items because I think that that's important to just to maintain the programs that are already within the school district. I think one thing I do want to kind of echo that Rebecca said is just improving communication between the city and the school district. I think is really important, particularly on the budget, and just finding ways, if we are going to be funding to the cap, making sure that we are really getting a large investment on that.
Thanks, Diana. That's time on that. Amy, let's try you again and see if we can hear you okay.
Okay, my voice clear? Good, okay, that worked.
All right.
Thanks. So I am public school educated. I homeschool my kids, and I am a very big supporter of education. It's really important to me, and not just for my own kids, but for Sitka and Sitka's kids too. It is obviously one of the main services we provide to our community, and that is going to be a priority as we look to fund the next budget. I say that, but we are in unprecedented times. We are looking at a $5 to $7 million shortfall, at least, as the current estimate is. And we have to fund all our all of our city services. We have to keep the lights on as well. So we have to be fair to the whole community. So I can't promise to fully fund. But I will be looking to the school board. I will be looking to the finance director and to the community as we look to make those decisions if I'm elected. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. Crystal, your response?
No question about the cap. We just talked about in the previous question disparities in education, education is an opportunity, and it's one of those levelers that exists out there. So yes, I support Sitka's children, and I know that they need to have a valuable education. So I'm willing to put the money where it needs to go. Non-instructional, I'm going to tell you, I have a little swimmer in my family. Her name is Emma, and that's not why I answer yes to that as well. But I think outside of just education, there are other elements that come through funding sources. Now, what I will do is kind of latch on to what Amy mentioned, which is we had a question that addressed it's going to be a really tough year because we don't have the type of revenue that we are expecting to come in, and we don't know what COVID is going to continue to do to our economy. So I am fully supportive of education, but I want to look at it as part of the bigger package, but no cap anytime, absolutely.
All right, next up, Leo Jimmy.
All right, thanks. I'll keep this short to the point. Yes to both, and definitely, you know, the cap is needed, full budget, and you know, to keep the teachers going. These are going to be our next leaders and our next educators when after we're gone. So that's very important to keep the schools going. You know, give them what they need, keep the teachers going, and the other structures or swimming pools or whatever other projects and programs we got that need to be funded. Thanks.
Thank you, Leo. Next up, Marshall.
Yeah, no, I can't say that I would. I'm a firm believer in our education, and we need to educate our children, but I cannot say that I will fully fund the school district to the cap. I think we need to, we're in tough times. We need to make some cuts and do what's necessary to keep the fundamentals going. And to tell you the truth, you know, I would also like to see some means tests on some of our teachers and make sure that when our kids do go through their grades and they get out of high school, they know how to read and write and do arithmetic and everything and have all the skills it's going to take to get them these better paying jobs and to do good in life. And I would like to see maybe some private partnership or something come in on the pool to maybe see if we can bring in some private money or something to help fund that. But I do believe in education, but I also believe in fiscal responsibility. And it seems like we fund it to the cap every time, but it seems like every year, you know, right now we have a bonded debt of $12.9 million for the school district. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The last person to answer this question, Frederick Olson Jr., your response.
Yes, I think we should definitely fully fund the schools. Like I had said earlier, schools are the backbone of a community, especially small communities. And, you know, sometimes people will say, oh, we spend a lot of money, but we don't get the test scores. But, you know, our kids aren't test scores, and our schools are much more than that. And just want to pivot, you know, there was some confusion. One of the candidates said, they brought up in systematic racism, they said that search has native hire preference. And that is definitely not systematic racism. That's a government to government relationship. And if you want to see systematic racism, you might look to the federally recognized tribes' original constitutions, where the president was elected every year, where the United States president's elected every 4 years. So you can see some built-in instability there in the government. That's more like systematic racism, but a government to government relationship giving you native hire preference is not.
Thank you all for your responses to that question. I have another question up here. Let's see. Lots to choose from. Okay, here's one about leadership. In your own opinion, where should the line be drawn between personal philosophy and the responsibilities of office? That is to say, how much should an elected official's personal morals dictate the legislation they advocate? That's 1 minute, and we'll start with Steve Lee.
The leadership comes from the mayor. As you know, mayor represent the assembly and administrator. I think good leadership will have a good sheep. Bad leadership will have bad sheep. And like I said, we support the good leader because he is voted on the table, and we should support anybody who's elected. Support. That's it.
Thank you, Steve.
Uh-huh.
Next is Amy. I'll repeat the question. In your own opinion, where should the line be drawn between personal philosophy and the responsibilities of office? That is to say, how much should an elected official's personal morals dictate the legislation they advocate?
Thanks. I think that will always be a part of the legislation you advocate. I don't think there's any way we can get it, can do anything other than that. But I do think there is absolutely a recognition, should be a recognition that legislation, as a legislator or a representative of a group of people, you are representing them all and creating an environment where all can live equally and free. So I don't think that, for example, religion or religious laws should be legislated. I think that would be inappropriate. But we do agree that murder is wrong. So that has its basis in fundamental major world religion, but we do agree that's a general good. So.
All right, Diana Dapsevich, your response?
I think this question is kind of relevant to just the reason that there are 8 candidates running right now. I think a lot of people feel like, maybe myself included, feel like there are some decisions made on the assembly or opinions that in which some assembly members are making just because they don't want to listen to a perspective that isn't their own. I think that's number one, is like that the assembly really needs to be willing to listen and have respectful discourse with differing perspectives and different opinions, because like I keep saying, this is a very diverse community. It's part of why I love this community, and a position on the assembly is a position as a representative of the community. And so it's important to listen equally and represent equally.
Thank you, Diana. Crystal?
I'm going to elevate my expectations for voters, because I know that they're voting on positions, they're voting for 2 candidates, but they're also voting on values. So those come out in how we respond to questions. Those come out where we show up. Those show up, that shows up when we are having conversations with community members. And so I think for me, I definitely have my moral grounds, but I think you're helped when you could recognize your own biases, including your moral positioning. And so I can tell you that one of my strengths is being able to walk a mile in another's shoes, put those on for size, and recognize that there are differences in opinions, and like Diana said, be respectful and try to draw out and ensure that this government is representative of the entire community of Sitka. So it's hard to separate. Of course, we all have biases based on our experiences, but I think that could really be yielded to help our community.
Thank you, Crystal. Next up is Leo. Leo.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Of course. The question is, in your own opinion, where should the line be drawn between personal philosophy and the responsibilities of office? That is to say, how much should an elected official's personal morals dictate the legislation they advocate?
Thanks. I don't know. I don't think morals should get in the way there, but the assembly, from what I've seen, I think it needs to be respectful of the public and listen to what they bring forward and the persons to be heard. And then if you look in the city site, we have our own mission there that I think we should probably look over and stick to the guidelines there of what we got, what we're supposed to do, as long as also keeping what we want to do for the city of Sitka individually, as there's 8 of us, and we all have our own platforms of what we want to do for Sitka, because we love where we live and we think it's a great place. So yes, that's leadership is important, and it's got to be done in a good, positive manner and respectful.
Thank you, Leo. Next up is Marshall.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're doing right here, isn't it? Letting the voters decide. And I think the voters will decide on who has the morals that they agree with or not. I mean, you could think the people are the greatest thing in the world. Remember just a couple of years ago, how many of these fabulous school teachers here in Sitka that got busted in that sex ring, you know, we thought they were good people to have teaching our kids and everything. And then boom, they get caught in this big, you know, swingers deal. And so be careful. I think we need to be real careful who we decide when we start thinking about we're going to decide this person's morals eliminates him from being or her from being on a certain board or something, because that's what the voters are for, and it's not for anybody else but the voters. That's why we're doing these forums. Thank you.
Frederick Olson Jr., your response?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, a person's morals are, of course, very important, but they shouldn't dictate what they do, at least at the government. But it gives a person a background, character. But of course, it shouldn't be shorthand for thinking or discussion. And you need to be fair to everyone, follow policy and procedures, follow the law, the Sitka Charter. We can encourage, because I volunteer in the community, maybe we could encourage people to volunteer, but we're not going to force people to volunteer, and that's not volunteering. But of course, morals are important. We want people to have morals. We got to get along in this society. But if someone's Catholic, you can't make everybody else Catholic, for example. You have to follow the law. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your response. And now, Rebecca, your response to the question.
Thanks. Yes, I try to teach my students to use the words in the question to help form their response. So I think we all bring our values to work. I have some really important values for myself. I'm a hard worker. I believe in continuous improvement. I like to be inclusive. Those are things that I'm going to bring with me wherever I go. That said, the responsibility of office does require that I consider other viewpoints. And as other candidates have said, it's not my job to judge those viewpoints, it's my job to hear them. And so the two things will always merge. I'm going to bring my values to the assembly, and then they'll be like a North Star guiding me as I get input from others. And I want to add, having the assembly table open for people to come talk to the assembly is one thing, going out and asking what people think is another. And I intend to be an assembly member who goes out and seeks input from a variety of people. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your responses to that question. We're running a little short on time. I think we can go until 8:35 since we started at 6:35, so we can have a full 2 hours here. So I would like to give you a couple more rapid fire questions, and let's cut them to 30 seconds so we can get some quick answers to some shorter questions here. Let's start with this one that's pretty straightforward. Yes or no, would you vote for this kind of question? Juneau's Assembly recently established a committee to review policies that sustain racial and ethnic discrimination. Many Sitkans believe that our community would benefit from such a committee. What do you think of this idea? As an Assembly member, would you vote in favor of establishing a systemic racism review committee in Sitka? So the question is, as an Assembly member, would you vote in favor of establishing a systemic racism review committee in Sitka? And we'll start with Amy Bethune, 30 seconds on the clock.
30 seconds. I think I would need more information to say yes or no. I am for equal treatment under the law. If there is existing policy that certainly is showing that all people are not being treated equally, I would be absolutely for that. As far as establishing a committee, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that at this point. I need more information. Thanks.
Okay, Diana Dapsevich, 30 seconds. Would you be in favor?
So am I muted?
You're not. We can hear you.
Okay. So I I believe I would probably be in favor. I would also want to know more about like the purpose and the procedures of what that committee would be and how it would be formed. But I think it's definitely something very relevant, and I'm definitely open to being in favor of something like that if the community calls for it. Absolutely.
Crystal Duncan, the question, as an Assembly member, would you vote in favor of establishing a systemic racism review committee in Sitka?
I would. And I want to applaud the efforts of Juneau to be able to bring this forward and pass it. And I think the only thing that I can add is I want to do it responsibly. So when we saw that Juneau was making that effort, I was interested in looking into it a little bit more. And so, like I said, I'm going to rely on the people who have knowledge in this area. And that's not me. I'm knowledgeable, but I know that there are people who are experts, and I can rely on that. So I reached out to First Alaskans to start the conversation around this topic area. Super enthused to play a role in it. So the answer to that is without question, yes.
All right. Now, Leo, Jimmy, 30 seconds. Would you be in favor of establishing a systemic racism review committee in Sitka?
At this point, no, I would say no. Reason why was I would need more information on what this committee would be doing and how they were going to be putting out their messages. If it was in a positive manner and how the public was going to receive it before I could vote yes on it. Thanks.
All right. Marshall, 30 seconds. Would you be in favor of establishing a systemic racism review committee in Sitka?
Absolutely not. Like I said earlier, I don't believe we have systemic racism here, and it's just another liberal push to make more regulations and more control over the people. We have plenty of laws on the books to deal with people who get out of hand or whatnot. We do not need another review board or more government in our life. We need to get rid of the government out of our life. Thank you.
All right. Frederick Olson, Jr., your response.
Yes, period. And, you know, maybe that will bring some life into the committees. You know, you can see in the committees and commissions on the city, there's so many vacancies. And so there must be something going on there where maybe the citizens don't feel listened to, or there's something they don't feel it's working. But maybe this is a hot topic, and maybe this could put some life in there, because this is a problem.
All right. And Rebecca.
Sure. Policy review is a valuable tool, should be done regularly and for a number of policies. I would want to see the best values of the nation's founders and our elders realized. And so if this committee would help get that done, I would need to understand the purpose of the committee. I'd want to make sure there was broad representation on the committee. I'd want to have input from the community. And then fundamentally, yes, if that's a step we can take to improve our recognition and our ability to work against systemic racism, then yes.
And Steve, 30 seconds for your response.
Yes. Like I said, I'm a special tool. I'm a professional with communication, with socialize with people. I got my BA as a religion. I used to be a Buddhist monk. I do a lot of meditation. I do a lot of communicating with people. And I do have a lot of experience connecting with people. Like everyone here sitting at the assembly on Zoom, as you know me, I'm a nice guy. I like to talk a lot. That's a big problem. But I like to build a foundation and communication for us to understand, all colors matters. And, like I said, I believe in the Lord. The Lord made us equal.
All right, that's time on that one. We just have a couple minutes left, and then we have to join with our regularly scheduled programming. So I'm going to give you one more question, and it'll be a 30-second response. I just want to give you 30 seconds to bring it home. Why should Sitkans vote for you to fill one of the 2 seats on the Sitka Assembly? And we'll begin with Diana Dapsevich.
Okay, I think Sitkans should vote for me because I care about Sitkans tremendously. It is my career. My whole job revolves around serving citizens, businesses, individuals, families. and I'm looking for more ways to do that and get involved and help. I also think that people should vote for me because I am a young voice. I represent the next generation of Sitka, and I think that we need to really be making decisions that are going to be with a focus on the future, and that's what I'm here for.
Thank you, Diana. Crystal.
Right time, right choice. I'm a lifelong Sitkin, and tonight I spent time showing you my positions and showing you my values. We still have 18 days until we're going to be casting our ballot, and I'm not done earning votes. So this was just one step towards doing that. You should know without question, I love Sitka. Sitka is home, and I feel compelled because now it's time for me to give back. So I hope what tonight serves to do is start conversations with community members. I'm here, I'm accessible, let's talk. Gonna cheesh.
Thank you. Leo, 30 seconds.
Yes, I think you should vote for me. I love Sitka. I want to give back what Sitka has done for me since 2012, since I moved here, and this is one of the ways that I want to be able to do that. Yes, there's a platform I also want to work on to get this done. And so when I get on assembly, that's what I plan on doing. I'm always around, so you can either call me, email me, or talk to me on the street. I'm always available for questions. If you have questions or want answers, if I don't know the answers, I can usually find them. Thanks.
All right, Marshall.
Yeah, you vote for me, or I hope you do, because for one, I'm a businessman with 3 thriving businesses that I built right here in Sitka, including a manufacturing business. I think I'm the only manufacturer that I know of right here in Sitka who actually produces stuff here in Sitka and puts it out to the rest of the world, and that's firearms. I have jobs for hopefully bringing this sawmill back, getting logging going, because if we cut our own timber and mill our own stuff and dry it, then we produce our own lumber. Cheaper to build houses, cheaper for our contractors, and it'll bring the cost of everything down. Thank you.
That's time there. Thank you. All right, Frederick.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity tonight. Thank you to all the other candidates. And the reason you should vote for me is long-range thinking, and especially treating this job as government and not politics. And because we don't need any more of that. We need people to get down to work and for Sitka. And you won't have any micromanagement problems with me. I understand the relationship with the city staff, and we'll work with the administrator Leach. And I think Sitka has a bright future. We just have to navigate through this crisis. But the candidates tonight, we should look to the future with some hope in Sitka. Thank you all. Good night.
All right, Rebecca.
Yeah, I would like to think that I've earned people's votes because I've been here for a long time and people have been able to get to know me over the years. I'm optimistic, I'm assets-based. I'm gonna look for what we're doing right and build on that. You can rely on me to work hard, do my homework. I have a track record of being respectful. And I've been working to improve Sitka one student at a time for a long, long time. And I want the opportunity to be part of the solution to some of the problems ahead. And I think we need a steady hand right now, and I think I can be that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Steve.
Well, I want to say thank you for all the candidates joining on Zoom. Appreciate it. You guys are brave souls. I believe in you guys. If you vote for me, I'll be on the assembly. I do my best. I'll be the voice and the bridge. And I believe in the Lord. And I serve the people and I serve the Lord. And I want to say good luck on your campaign. I believe in you. Thank you for stepping up and be the voice and the bridge of Sitka. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And Amy.
I also want to say thank you to you and also to the people listening and tuning in tonight. I have a commitment to sound financial management of our budget. I recognize that it's the people's money, not my own, and would bring that awareness every time I come to the table. I support responsible business and economic development here. It's important to me to also ensure a light hand of government and be very aware of not overstepping into personal freedoms, constitutionally guaranteed freedoms. I'm also a hard worker, do my research, and have another fresh eyes on the book. And I just would bring a tone of respectfulness to the table as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's time. And thank you again, all of you, for taking the time to talk with me tonight for this forum. And I want to, again, thank you so much to all the candidates. I know we ran a little bit over, so I have to be pretty quick here. But I want to say thank you, and thank you to the public for submitting so many questions. If your question wasn't answered tonight, I do want to apologize. We got to as many as we could, but remember, the contact information for the candidates is listed on the city's website. You can email or call them with your questions directly. There are also other opportunities to get the answers to the questions that you want. I want to plug KIFW has been interviewing all the candidates for an hour, and you can call in and ask your questions there or go back and listen to the ones that have already happened. And if you missed any of our forums or you'd like to go back and listen again, they're all posted on our website on the Raven Radio Election Hub. You can find on our website at kcaw.org. You'll also find candidate statements, questionnaires, and a sample ballot, and the Rotary Forum will be posted there as well. So you've been listening to our Assembly Candidate Election Forum on Raven Radio, KCAW Sitka. I'm Catherine Rose, and up next we're joining the program Jazz Night in America in Progress, followed by the Bay Whalen Hour at 9. You're listening to Raven Radio, KCAW Sitka.